Hey, yo, what is going on? This is John Ross Marcus Cox here back at you with the Way Too Much JRMC podcast. How's everybody doing today? Hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Enjoyed your family. Enjoyed fighting with your uncle, your cousin, whatever. Hope everybody enjoyed their kids and a few minutes off. And hope everybody enjoyed that Cowboys game. I know I did. So yeah, coming back here at y'all today for a couple reasons. Number one, because since the last episode, I've been lucky enough to get to talk to civilians and politicians and everything about the content, and definitely think I need to hash out some things a little further, based on what I was talking about and just the points I'm trying to get across. One thing y'all are going to learn along the way with me is, yes, I try to be buttoned up. I try to have done research. I try to, have my points I want to get across, all that good stuff. But more than anything, I really like to just try to put it all out there and be, transparent and vulnerable and not think that I can think through every thought before putting it out there to you guys, because guess what? That ain't real life. You don't get to do that. You don't get to think about everything you're about to say when you're at dinner with other couple friends, right? Like you're just shooting the crap with dudes on the street or whatever, football practice, or at your kids' gymnastics practice or whatever. You don't get time to think everything through, and I think that's where growth occurs, is in those moments of just utter honesty and hearing what other people have to say, but also trying to explain your argument, your beliefs, that kind of thing there. So that's the main thing. The other thing is that I want to talk to you about some Thanksgiving thoughts and things I'm thankful for this year and things that have happened, all that good stuff. So, like always, it's a few house cleaning items here. Obviously y'all can find me anywhere you want on any of the audio platforms. So Spotify, Amazon Podcast, Google Podcast, Pandora, Stitcher, all those bad boys. You can find me on video on YouTube and on Rumble. And you can always interact with me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, just on any platform or social media site. Just type in way, WAY, the number 2 much, MUCH, so way too much, and then JRMC, that stands for John Ross Marcus Cox, because my mommy just knew I was gonna have that kind of swagger, and so she wanted to give me 4 names. So that's the Way Too Much JRMC podcast. So I try to give you Way Too Much John Ross Marcus Cox. So yeah, here's where we're going to start today. It'll be a little different than well, you know what? Actually, I'm going to start with a couple of just where I'm at on my last episode. So we talked last episode, I kind of broke down the emerging changes amongst the Republican electorate, and I did that through the microcosm of 2 constitutional amendments that passed in a very conservative state, which is Nebraska, and they had passed a constitutional amendment to increase the minimum wage and also to enact stricter voter ID requirements, mainly just simply making people show an ID before they vote. I mean, not that it's super strict or anything. To the left, it's super strict, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be viewed that way. And I think a lot of people took me explaining what this new voter base and what the new Republican Party, what I think are the majority voters of the Republican Party, my explanation of what their background and where they're coming from and where their head's at as an endorsement of whether it be increasing the minimum wage or the legalization of marijuana or whatever. I wasn't necessarily endorsing anything. I was simply trying to explain that the electorate's changing. Right, these voters aren't energized. I mean, I don't. Anybody says they're not energized by low taxes and business-friendly climates. They're not. I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I'm not saying that shouldn't be the goal was to try to educate them and myself. That shouldn't be the goal of that it shouldn't be the goal of Republican leadership to explain to and educate those voters on why low taxes and business-friendly climates are important for a free market capitalist society. Okay, but that's not what has them on the move into the Republican Party. So these are voters that, again, at the end of the 90s, were voted for Bill Clinton both times. Okay, they're ones here in Kentucky that kept our Kentucky state legislature blue for a very long time. I think we've had 2 Republican governors in like 50 years here, or something, 40 years. Okay, it's like, but we're still one of the most religious and socially conservative states in the union. But we were voting Democrat forever, as even on a state and local level. So what made those voters go from voting for Clinton to coming over and voting in the Republican Party now? What I'm trying to say is what has them on the move isn't low taxes, isn't business-friendly climates, but it's still conservative principles that have them on the move. And so my argument is we just have to realize who these voters are and realize that there are things that current Republicans do agree with them on. It's culture war stuff. Right? Like, these people are tired of watching their churches be demonized. They're tired of watching their kids be going to schools where they're told that they can be boys or be girls, and they're going to schools where they have kitty litter boxes, all that stuff. They're tired of being told it's like that it's bad if their daughters like to play with Barbies, that it's bad if they want to be stay-at-home moms. They're tired of these. They're tired of this stuff. Okay, so like my main point is just that instead of being like having a disdain for them and thinking that they're petty and like they should be worried about wanting taxes lowered and all that, I'm saying don't cut off. It's not cut off our nose and spite our own face. Like what they want passed is conservative, constitutional, principled stuff. Give them those things because they are aligned with your views as well, and then keep them in the party voting red long enough to intentionally educate them and thoughtfully educate them on other party principles. But if we don't give them some of those wins, these culture war wins, they're not going to be around long enough for you to convince them that low taxes should be the most important thing, or that business-friendly climates are an important thing. They'll go back and vote for the Democrat Party again. And in Kentucky, specifically here, I'm just telling everyone right now, if we don't pass this type of legislation I'm talking about, Andy Beshear will win again. If we don't pass legislation that makes him have to stand up at a podium and say, I think little boys should be able to go in little girls' bathrooms, he will win. Again, I don't care if you like it. I don't. It doesn't. It is what it is. And the reason I know it is because I am one of those voters. I'm not sophisticated. I'm not well. I mean, I have a degree, but I'm not like well educated. Okay, like I'm the average person. So now we're going to get into some of those things here in a few minutes, because again, like I should have been more clear in the last episode. I mean, I don't endorse increasing the minimum wage. It's obviously not a good thing. I was just empathizing with them with the people that voted for that in Nebraska, because I also know it's people just trying to buy milk for their babies, and milk is expensive, and they don't have time or the luxury of worrying of voting on these bigger principles. They have children. They're afraid of starving and not having a roof over their head. All right, so now I'm gonna change gears here just for a second. For those of y'all watching, I'm reading a little excerpt from Hillbilly Elegy here by J.D. Vance. I should have told you the name. I was going to ask you. I was going to surprise you with something. But well. I read this book, I guess, probably, I think right when it came out in 2016. I was literally walking through an airport and was on like a layover. My flight had gotten bumped back or something. And I needed something to do, and I literally stumbled onto this. And then couldn't put it down. As you can see, I mean, look at all the tabs and stuff on here. I'm one of those guys. Read super slow. You know, take every sentence reread every sentence 15 times, and my Tourette's goes wild, and I'm twitching and having to read. It's like it's bad. It's awful. But I got through this one, and by then it's like I was crying throughout it. I mean, seriously, like tears in my eyes, because it was such a. I related with it so much, and I know that other people from where I'm from in Appalachia they really relate to it. But I'm gonna read the next excerpt just from the introduction. I'm mad I told you who wrote it. But this will be. I'm gonna read about a page and a half here. He says, "My name is J.D. Vance, and I think I should start with a confession. I find the existence of the book you hold in your hand somewhat absurd. It says right there on the cover that it's a memoir, but I'm 31 years old, and I'll be the first to admit that I've accomplished nothing great in my life. Certainly nothing that would justify a complete stranger paying money to read about it. The coolest thing I've done, at least on paper, is graduate from Yale Law School. Something 13-year-old J.D. Vance would have considered ludicrous. But about 200 people do the same thing every year, and trust me, you don't want to read about most of their lives either." This liner here is very eerie. He says, "I'm not a senator, a governor, or a former cabinet secretary. I haven't started a billion-dollar company or a world-changing nonprofit. I have a nice job, a happy marriage, a comfortable home, and 2 lively dogs." He is now a senator-elect from the state of Ohio, which is crazy. He says, "So I didn't write this book because I've accomplished something extraordinary. I wrote this book because I've achieved something quite ordinary, which doesn't happen to most kids who grow up like me." I got chill bumps. Reading that. Sorry, give me a second. You see, I grew up poor in the Rust Belt in an Ohio steel town that has been hemorrhaging jobs and hope for as long as I can remember. I have, to put it mildly, a complex relationship with my parents, one of whom has struggled with addiction for nearly my entire life. My grandparents, neither of whom graduated from high school, raised me, and few members of even my extended family attended college. The statistics tell you that kids like me face a grim future, that if they're lucky, they'll manage to avoid welfare, and if they're unlucky, they'll die of a heroin overdose. This happened to dozens in my small hometown just last year. I was one of those kids with a grim future. I almost fell out of high school. I nearly gave in to the deep anger and resentment harbored by everyone around me. Today, people look at me, at my job, and my Ivy League credentials and assume that I'm some sort of genius, that only a truly extraordinary person could have made it to where I am today. With all due respect to those people, I think that theory is a load of bullshit. Whatever talents I have, I almost squandered until a handful of loving people rescued me. That is the real story of my life, and that is why I wrote this book. I want people to know what it feels like to nearly give up on yourself and why you might do it. I want people to understand what happens in the lives of the poor and the psychological impact that spiritual and material poverty has on their children. I want people to understand the American dream as my family encountered it. I want people to understand how upward mobility really feels. And I want people to understand something I learned only recently. That for those of us lucky enough to live the American dream, the demons of the life we left behind continue to chase us. Woo! It's been years since I read this book. I just opened it up and it was like everything just came flowing back through my veins there. All the emotions I was feeling when I was reading this book. But this book is eerie because he wrote this book in 2016. Now we're in 2022, and he is a senator-elect. But like when I'm all like, I have people that listen to this show, and some people get upset with me because I self-deprecate a lot, and I make fun of myself or whatever, and they just think it's unbecoming, and it tends to, if I'm building up credibility, maybe I self-sabotage and walk you back 2 steps from that credibility because I'm just not comfortable with the credibility. But Senator Vance here, I mean, we've never met each other. He's from, I think, Southeast Ohio. I'm from Southeastern Kentucky. Like, I think, but his grandmother was in Jackson, Kentucky. It's something eerie though that two guys, pretty similar in age, I think actually we might be the same age, had such similar experiences, and have both kind of. This is the same things that I'm feeling. Like, I feel ridiculous that I'm doing this podcast because I haven't done anything extraordinary. By any measure, my life is ordinary, just like him. I'm married to a beautiful woman, sweet, kind, generous, God-loving woman, 4 beautiful children, nice home. I'm driving my bourbon like an American should, my Suburban like an American should, and a Tahoe like an American should. And it's ludicrous that I'm on this mic right now. But I think he ran for the Senate the same reason I'm doing this show, because people need to know. Because we're not the exception to the rule, or at least our upbringing. We are the exception to the rule as far as the fact of where we're both at today. But our upbringing and our trials and tribulations in life are the rule and not the exception. And we are where we are today in spite of those experiences, not because of them. So if JD's anything like me, he feels a sense of obligation. Like, I feel a deep intrinsic sense of obligation to tell the story of people from the other side of the tracks, and to explain to people the mindset, okay, and try to figure out a way to help legislators, politicians, figure out a way to help them accomplish legislative priorities while also helping people that historically have been beaten down on without compromising their principles. Okay, so that's that's where I'm at on this. So I had to read that to you. I mean, it was absolutely that little section there. I mean, I couldn't sum up any better where I feel like I'm at right now. Like, the same ridiculousness that he felt writing this book is the ridiculousness that I feel doing this podcast and having the conversations I do with legislators, and maybe kind of rubbing elbows with the people I'm rubbing elbows with, and having the conversations with people I'm having. It's like I am so like in awe of what God can do. And what we can do as individuals. It's like, I do feel like I've lived the American dream. I feel like I'm living it. But it's not the American dream I think that we all thought it was going to be back during the Industrial Revolution and all that stuff, rags to riches. It's literally right now, like, for me, the American dream is simply, growing up poor, growing up tough, small Southeast Kentucky town, your dad dies of a drug overdose, to just finding a sense of purpose, to overcoming those trials, overcoming the spiritual, deprivation, neglect, and the self-sabotagery, I'll call it, the anger, depression, and It's the devil. I don't know any other way to put it, but like overcoming those things, going through them, and finding yourself looking up and being like, how? There's no other way to explain how I got here other than Jesus. There's not. That's the American dream, to me. So now let's jump back into the last podcast. So I'm not going to tell you who I've been talking with as far as legislators and all that stuff goes. But I'm very lucky in the sense that I have several that don't just listen to the show, but they listen and they give me crucial feedback and crucial time that they don't have, that they could be devoting to someone else, but they obviously, thankfully, I think they see something in me that maybe I can do some good in this world. But it was clear to me that last episode that other than just, maybe seeming like I was endorsing some of the, so like, let's just take minimum wage, for instance, but also, and I think this actually is something that I'm trying to do. I maybe made some people uncomfortable with my description of the country club Republicans, right? Like painting this picture of, the rich white guy with the white hair come over. It's about 6'2", broad shoulders. Got a nice little sport jacket on, walking out of the Keeneland suites. And I say stuff like that. Not because, now I'll be honest, 10 years ago, it would have been out of prejudice. It would have been out of like resent, and like me disliking people solely because of their station in life. Like 10 years ago, if you had money, it was like my heart, my soul couldn't give you a chance because I was so like just resentful of the fact that someone else had that. But now I look back at, like, I wasn't mad at them because they had it. I was mad at them because at the time I knew I didn't have it in me to go out and get it. I didn't have the will, the like self-discipline, the courage, self-confidence. I didn't have all that. So I was mad at them for that. But sometimes those descriptions that the script for like descriptory words and like or whatever, it elicits a very like a very intense response from some people, especially if they relate themselves with that description. But I say it simply to try to elicit that response, but also to call myself out and say, listen, I'm saying this to you because I used to think this way in a negative, like I really believe that about these people. Now I'm self-aware enough to know that, like, every time I feel that way about someone, or I have that thought, like, that's an old country club boy right there. Look at old rich boy walking down the street. That I need to, like, stop in the moment, take a gut check, and then really give that person a chance to see if they really are like that or not. Now, this part, people may not like me just hearing this, but there's times where I take stock, and guess what? Old dude is who I thought he was, or old girl is who I thought she was. Like, that ain't my fault. I say this all the time, like, I try really hard, like, to not think somebody's an SOB until they tell me they're an SOB. But once they tell me that, I mean, I'm gonna believe them. So, but like, I do want to make it clear that to anybody that's watching like that, I don't make those descriptions try to run people off and try to be tough. It's really me being vulnerable and trying to be, like, transparent about my own preconceived biases and notions and all that stuff, so that we can have an open, honest conversation. But I can almost guarantee you, anyone that's listening to this and that after hearing that continues to listen, you're the exact type of person I'm trying to say. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have given you a chance. All right, but I'd have been mad at you for not giving me a chance, even though I wasn't giving you a chance. And that was wrong of me, and I'm still fighting that. I'm still fighting those demons and trying to get better. Okay, so let's get back to the minimum wage thing here. So one of the things that was said to me was that it seemed like I was saying that GOP leaders should institute legislation that would favor, like, let's say, for instance, an increase in minimum wage. And that, I think the way they put it was, true GOP leaders should lead by helping voters see the folly of such laws. So, again, first of all, I wasn't endorsing the minimum wage, but I do want to extrapolate on that, the fact that the leaders should help voters see the folly of such laws. In order to show people that, people have to be listening to you. They have to remain in your circle, right? So, as opposed to giving in and giving them legislation that maybe they want, but that is ill-advised, what I'm trying to say is we should find constitutionally Christian principled legislation that we can enact and kind of bring us together as a way to show progress, so that we can live to fight another day and explain to people, hey, listen, I know it's counterintuitive, but a lot of times when employers have to pay you less, you end up making more because of competition, because of free markets. It's kind of that whole concept of discipline equals freedom, right? If you know Jocko Willink, I can tell you right now, I've learned that over these years. Like, the more disciplined you are, the more freedom you have, and the more freedom you have, the more disciplined you want to be. It's kind of what's old saying. It's like competence breeds confidence, breeds competence, breeds confidence. You just start to eat, sleep, and breathe it. But when you're not disciplined, it's impossible to fathom. People are like, oh, whatever you did to get in shape, I can't do that. I got diabetes, or I got high blood pressure, or I can't get out. I can't get out in the sun and feel better with myself. I got psoriasis. Whatever it may be. And you can be sitting there saying, you can beat yourself over the head and say, listen, if you do what I'm telling you to do, I had the same exact problem. They're not going to believe you, because in the moment their plight is so strong, is so bad that they can't fathom that someone else is going through it. So again, you can either shout them down and try to convince them your way, or if you really want to convince them, you get in there with them and you figure out a way to get your message across in a way to where almost they feel like at the end of it that they came up with that. And they may never give you credit for it. But again, is the goal to change hearts and minds and make the country a better place? Or is the goal that person will remember, I'm the one that convinced them that minimum wage laws are bad? So now the person that was interacting with me on this, they're absolutely right about what they're saying about the Thomas Sowell and the Rand Paul arguments about minimum wage. Like they're 100% correct on what they're saying. Okay, again, like for whatever reason, may have let it come across that I was endorsing a minimum wage hike. I wasn't. So I want to make that clear. Now, I don't know that we talked about this. I don't know if I talked about this in the last show or not, but this has came up several times for me in the last few days, and so I feel like I need to address it here, because this is also one of those hot topics, especially from in libertarian circles and conservative circles. Excuse me. All that. And all those, the Republican country club parties. I'm just kidding. Don't get mad at me. I'm joking with you. And that's, the friendly, corporate environment, low business tax environment, and more importantly, the employer's ability to do what they feel is best for their business and then an employer's right to choose to not partake in it by leaving and going elsewhere. So being more specific, we're talking about employer mandates. So this is one thing. This is one topic. I will tell people. Okay, and I've thought this through. And I know I'm going to disagree with several of the legislators I've spoken with on the last show, about the last show. I just fundamentally disagree that an employer should be able to make employees do something, specifically, get the jab, the COVID vaccine. I want everybody to go to Rumble or go to Google and just type in "died suddenly." Watch that documentary, okay? But the reason I disagree, especially with the employer mandates with this, is kind of twofold. Number one, we don't live in 1920 anymore. Okay, we all saw during COVID, the government picks winners and losers. We don't live in this vacuum of this free market. Walmart, Amazon, Ford, the teachers unions, the state, the big grocery store chains, they have a gigantic hold on the marketplace and employment. And they also have basically unchallenged unchecked power in the sense that they're not liable for anything that they put onto you, especially when it comes to vaccines. So again, we're not living in a world where employers have all these rights and all these responsibilities, and employees have all these rights and responsibilities, and they all there's a check and balance to keep each other in check. One of the biggest checks on that system right now is heavily in favor of employers. So again, this last session in Kentucky legislature, we had some bills that were put out there. A lot of them were to stop the employer mandates on the vaccine. I will say this: I do not like legislation that specifically imposes requirements on businesses. So saying you can't require your people to get this vaccine, because again, theoretically, those employers should know what is needed in their workplace and in their industry and in their business better than anyone else. I'm 100% on board with that. The bill I was trying to get support for, and I'll say I was such a wet behind the ears and just a rookie. I didn't have time to talk about more than just the primary bill I was down there. Next time around, I would have been able to. I just wanted to eliminate the employer liability protections. Okay, it is totally unreasonable and un-American that a business can let you work there 20 years, give you benefits, building up for retirement, pension, whatever, and then all of a sudden on that 20th year say, well, if you don't go get a shot in your arm, you don't have to work here. But if you leave, you lose your pension. You gotta go find another job. Okay, I'm a coal miner. Where am I gonna find another job? It's totally ridiculous. They can do that, and there's the reason they're willing to do it is because there's no downside for them. The government wanted the vaccine pushed. They knew the left would be screaming bloody murder if they didn't require people to get it. They'd be trying to boycott for that. So because of that liability protection, it actually made more sense for them to force everybody to get a shot. I mean, we are cutting people out of the military at a time when we are struggling to get anybody to enlist. Okay, we were firing nurses for not getting the shot at a time when we needed nurses the most. We have teacher shortages all across the United States, bus driver shortages. And we were putting more restrictive requirements on them, and those are the populations that want to get the jab the least. And there's one reason behind that, because nobody can sue you if it messes with you. So here's the deal. I'm willing to give you in a vacuum where there's checks and balances, and the government isn't favoring either side, the employer or the employee. But it's game. Let's do it. But if old Ricky Bobby, all right, old Ricky Lewis, that's my stepdad's name, so that's why I'm saying that. Old Ricky Lewis, you make him get that shot, and then old dude comes down with something, and it's because of that shot. By God, he will be able to sue you. Especially in so many of these instances where the employer or the employee was going to the employer and saying, "Hey, listen, my doctor is telling me I can't get this shot, or that it's against my interest to get this shot because of like health characteristics I have, my risk of stroke or whatever." And the employer would say, "It doesn't matter, man. You got to get it." In what world is that okay? In what free world are we living in? If that's a free world, then we want to live in different worlds. But it's just like the schools. Everybody was telling me I was trying to tell people they couldn't wear masks. No, I wasn't. I wasn't telling the legislature to take the power back from school boards. I wasn't. I was saying give everyone the freedom to wear the mask if they want to and not wear it if they don't want to. So that's when I talk about banning employer mandates, what I'm saying is no, employers don't have the right to tell you about the medical decisions you need to make for yourself. They don't. But I'm not trying to keep them from being. Again, that's my belief. But I still am able to see over the top of my own prejudice, on my own opinion of what I'm trying to do here, and say that's probably not constitutional for me to tell a business they can't do that they can't do something. But what is constitutional and what said, if we're talking about getting rid of rent-seeking behavior and seeking out protections from the government. Listen, Mr. Corporate CEO, up in your ivory tower, in your downtown penthouse suite office, you gonna make somebody get that jab? When something happens to them and you made them get it, you better be ready to pony up. And that's the check, and that's the balance in that relationship. Right now, there is no check and balance. This is what it is. So, then I saw this. And this is another topic, but I'm on one now, so I'm just gonna go for it. So I was I follow several people on social media and Facebook, and I'm friends with people from all different kinds of political persuasions. But this mindset does, like, I used to think I was a libertarian. Like I used to think that, like, that everything should just be wide open and everything would work itself out. But what changed in my mind was this thought that in order for that to be the case, we have to be seeing the world through similar lenses, at least. Like, it's not okay to buy our stuff, and like allow Apple to operate in China, where they are literally, there's slave labor there. The Uyghur Muslims are enslaved, and we're bringing their products back over here. And since it's making it cheaper for us, and that's the end all be all in America, it's consumerism, that it's okay because it's a free market. It's not okay. It's not. I don't care. I don't care what anyone says. It's not okay. Now, if we were all operating under the same standards, that we all respected our employees, and we all were trying to do what's best and try to make a profit, and all that kind of stuff. If that's where we were at, then great. But we don't. It's impossible to operate like that whenever you have all these other countries that are doing everything they possibly can to like undercut us and treating people like garbage. It's out of sight, out of mind, so we go along with it. And so, but I'll bring that up because I've gotten the feeling from several people that I know are libertarians, and I respect them. And I feel like they're very intellectual, and they definitely are much more educated on countless issues. More educated than I am on countless issues. But they've started to attribute so much of what I'm trying to do, of what I feel like I'm actually lobbying for freedom, to be able to choose if you want to wear a mask, choose if you want to get a shot, choose where you want to go to school. They're buying this narrative that makes someone like me a statist, that I'm going out and lobbying the state to enforce my principles. And one of my responses to that is just always like, no, I just see that as me trying to participate in a modern society. Because in the past, my way of thinking, we just went and whoop some ass. We went and beat some people up and been able to do what we want to do. But it said, one person I know says, something a few libertarians need to understand: you can affect culture without statism. The philosophy of liberty only negates the use of force. It does not negate peaceful activism. Cultural conservatives, even fundamentalist Bible thumpers, can and should advocate for their morals, so long as they stop short of doing so via the means of the state. Any libertarian who opposes this either does not understand the philosophy of liberty or is simply hostile to conservative culture. And the person went on to say, and yes, this means using legislation to block employer mandates, prevent surgical procedures, or to remove books from schools are all wrong. And that's the thing. So I'm talking about fighting this war inside the Republican Party. So I said, you got voters over here that are voting red, that are voting for constitutional amendments to raise the minimum wage. Then you have the other end of the Republican Party who think that it is statist to use legislation to keep employers from making you as an individual do something, to using legislation to prevent adults from allowing their minor children to have surgical procedures to mutilate their genitalia, because libertarians think your kids are your property, you own them. That's literally what they believe. And then it's also bad to use legislation to remove books from schools. What are the other options? Because I can tell you, the people that want to do those things, they're trying to use legislation. Libertarians think they're armed to the teeth. Come on down to the South, brother. Come on down to the South, where people are have the mindset I have. They want to do the things I'm talking about doing, and are their own, and that are armed to the teeth and are their own well-armed militia. So, like, nobody wants to go there because it ain't going to end well. But what are the other options to protect people that aren't smart, and I won't say smart enough, aren't mature enough yet to understand what's being done to them? So, if I have to use legislation to keep doctors from being able to psychologically manipulate parents and children into thinking it's that their son that likes to play with Barbies is actually a girl, and they should allow them to take hormone blockers and estrogen or whatever, and then at 16 be able to surgically remove the reproductive organs. If that means I have to use that legislation for that, by God, that's what it means. We can disagree. We can agree to disagree, and you lobby your position, I'll lobby mine, and let the best man win. That's all I know to say. That's all I know to tell you. When it comes to removing books from schools, like, again, the legislation that the Bible thumpers this person is talking about is trying to enact isn't saying that these books should be burned and not be sold anywhere. Trust me, there is a part of me that wants to take my alpha dog personality and manipulative skill set in order to get legislators to do just that and get rid of these books and make it illegal to even write them because they're sick. And anyone who thinks that a child that's LGBTQ can only find themselves in a sexually graphic novel that talks about stuff that no 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old should be thinking about. Again, this is coming from a guy who lost his virginity at 12 years old. I'm not here because of it. I'm here in spite of it. I needed someone to show me the way and say, this isn't the way to success. Because most people aren't like me and JD Vance and make it out. We end up with a high school girlfriend pregnant, dropping out of high school, working in the coal mines, being angry and depressed, and then eventually on OxyContin and dying of a drug overdose when 37. Jackie Marcus Cox is my father. That's his story. So I don't care if you don't like it or disagree with it. Brother, I lived it. So you don't deserve an opinion on this matter. It happened. It happens. It's happening. If I have to use legislation to keep people from it's the stuff they're allowing these kids to do, and the stuff that these doctors are having kids do. But again, like there's a fine line. Like I in the past have said when it comes to these books, listen, I'm not trying to get them out of all libraries. If parents want to buy them and give them to their kids, that's more power to them. I've said that before, but then I find myself thinking like, do I really think that? Would I think it was okay for a parent I think my child's more mentally mature than other children, so I'm going to show them porn. I wouldn't agree with that. And I can tell you from experience, the psychological trauma that you experience when you're a child is just as bad as the physical trauma you experience, and I've experienced both. So it is a fine line. That's like I think where the fine line comes into play is like there does come a time where community policing does have to come into play. And I don't mean like physical policing. I just mean like ostracizing people and making it known that, hey, that's not acceptable. The same way you don't want to go to jail and be a chomo, be a child molester. They self-police it. So you ain't trying to go to jail for that. So, it's like I ain't trying to lock everybody, because again, life isn't black and white. It's full of nuance and gray area. So I'm not trying to I don't want the state being able to decide that every single parent that they dislike is abusing their child or harming their child because they thought they were ready to read a book or something. That's not what I'm trying. It's not what I'm trying to do here. But if we're going to have public schools, we absolutely have a right and a responsibility to steward those children along the way and to fill them with the principles and values that we feel are essential to live in a quintessential American life, right? And again, on the employer mandate stuff here, it's like, yes, theoretically you can leave and go find another job. Theoretically. Can I do that? Yes. I am the exception and not the rule. Can a dude that's been working at Walmart, or maybe people can relate with more. Somebody who's been in the military for 20 years and is a career officer or a career military man or whatever, can they simply walk away and go into another field because the government says they had to get a vaccine that they didn't need because they were healthy? And then literally people that think they're libertarians think, well, he's just I don't even know what they're thinking. I don't know what they're thinking. That's not freedom. Being able to tell people, being able to make people do things. When it comes to injecting things in their bodies and wearing things on their bodies. So again, I think we look at things, we look at stuff so bass backward at times. But I try really hard when I'm looking at legislation or I'm talking with legislators to always look at the things I'm talking about through the lens, the prism of personal liberty and personal responsibility, and as much free market as possible. But the difference in the difference between the 2022 Republican and a 1982 Republican, a Reaganomics Republican, is that as a society, we don't see employment as the end all, as like the end all be all. I don't really know how to put my finger on that. But like this idea that 1982 Ronald Reagan policies were just the best things at sliced bread. Have y'all watched the movie The Messenger? Or Narcos? Do y'all know what the CIA was doing with pumping coke and crack through the streets of LA? That our government was selling the drugs, but they were in turn locking every black man on the planet up and locking them up, throwing away the key. They were the ones selling them the drugs so they could fund wars in other places. It's not conspiracy theory stuff. And if you think it is, keep thinking that way, because the voters they're going to find other politicians. All you got to do is do a little research. Okay, if we're still okay with people, with employers, I think that there's been like 13 billion vaccines administered or something at this point. If we're still okay with big pharma and the government being in bed and big business being in bed with each other, after the opioid epidemic, Christ Almighty, Lord help us. My daddy is dead because of y'all. Because y'all let them pump OxyContin through the streets of Appalachia, no holds barred. Y'all gave them a special label to put on it to tell my daddy that it wasn't addictive. And it took y'all 25 years or whatever to even to even put on a show like you're holding them accountable. I think they paid what, $6 billion in fines or something, but they made $20 billion in profits. You can go watch the show Dope Sick on Hulu, please. So again, listen, I'm not a politician. I don't have a vote in the legislature, in any legislature. Same way JD Vance didn't either when he wrote this book. I'm just not thinking of this live right now. What I'm trying to tell y'all is either y'all can be smarter than me like you are, like you probably are smarter than JD Vance. Maybe not even to Yale, maybe not. You can try to understand what's happening, or you may mess around one day and old John Ross Marcus Cox might be the governor. The governor. I keep talking too loud in my mic. Might be the governor. JD Vance is a senator now. In 2016, he was 31 years old, living a normal life, making fun of himself, being self-deprecating in the introduction of his book, saying, this is ridiculous, I'm writing this book. What I'm trying to say is, it is ridiculous that I'm doing this podcast. But it is what it is. And I'm not telling you that I know all the answers, that I know the best bills, and I know all the legislation you pass and all that. All I'm telling you is, I've lived a life that I'm thankful for the life God has given me. All the hard times, the trials, the tribulations, and that He allowed me to come through the struggle and still be here today and have an audience with you, to be able to help explain to you what's happening to real Americans, so that you can think of, find legislation that can constitutionally help set people up for success and give them a route to personal freedom and prosperity. And I just know we don't do that, especially in ways that we've already done before and it didn't work. Like, for instance, getting tough on crime and locking everybody up, while the right hand's doing that, the left hand over here is handing drugs, dropping drugs off on the corners of L.A. and getting everybody high and selling the drugs and using the money to fund guerrilla wars. Not like this is a conspiracy. This isn't. All right, so let's move on past that. And again, all y'all that listen, politicians, civilians, everything, I want your feedback. I want to know what you think. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I said, I obviously messed up on the last show and made it seem like I was endorsing minimum wage increases when I wasn't. I needed to be able to correct that. I couldn't have corrected that without someone informing me of it coming off that way. That's what I want. I want dialogue. I want to have dialogue with you. To help you as a politician, to help you as a civilian, to be able to, so that each of you all, so that the civilian and the politician can interact with one another better. Because guess what? Every civilian, most of the ones where I'm from, haven't lived the life I've lived and came through it and lived to have the success story, to be able to empathize with both sides and to be able to articulate what each side's thinking. So it's equally important for both sides to listen, because maybe, just maybe, I can give you that one little piece of the puzzle to make it where you all can have a conversation and get rid of my redneck butt. You don't need me no more. So, that's it. It's a great segue. Talking about trials, tribulations. this year, it's hard to believe it's only been 11 months. What I caught myself yesterday thinking about, and yeah, I go too deep all the time. I'm always in deep thought, I feel like. What I found myself being extremely thankful for was all the times in my life where I felt like God was just putting too much on me, making things too hard, like I couldn't make it. Only to find out, like now I'm 36, and I'm like, I understand what all those were. I understand why it had to happen. Growing up in Appalachia, I can hear it now. I never thought I would be able to say I'm so extremely grateful for all the hard stuff that I like, the sad, tragic, like tough circumstances that I either experienced myself or saw other people experience. The relationships I went through that I thought was going to ruin everything, that I thought was the end of it. I'm extremely thankful. I listened to my Bible the other day. I look back on, I think every hillbilly can, especially in the last 20 years, has a moment like this, where they make a conscious decision to snort that first pill, pop that first Xambar, snort that first line, whatever. And I'm no different. I remember sitting in that Grand Cherokee, that burgundy Grand Cherokee. My boy, his initials is DC. I ain't gonna say his name out loud. I ain't trying to put him on the spot like that. But I lived my whole life, all the way through, high school, determined and not like my father. He was a drug addict. And things just got tough. It was my freshman year at college in the summer. I said, "Hey, man," I was at wit's end. I was like, "Hey, man, me going on a pill with you." And we got in that Grand Cherokee. I don't know what it was. I watched him chop it up with that credit card. Watched him roll up that $20 bill. Scrape them lines together. And this friend of mine who was younger than me, he was still in high school. Who knows how many people he snorted the first pill with? He looked up at me. He threw me my $5 back. He goes, "Get out. Get out of the car." I was like, "What?" He's like, I won't be that guy. I won't be the guy." Because he knew how important it was to me. How hard I tried to stay on the straight and narrow. He may not even know. He may not even remember that night. He may have been too strung out. I'm so thankful for that, for whatever God put on his heart. Because we all know where I would have ended up. So I'm thankful for the hard times. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. And all back over again. Bad times create strong men. So if I've learned anything, if I've been taught anything over this 2022, it's been that, man, in those darkest of moments, when you think like, I can't keep coaching and dealing with all this COVID mask mandate. I can't deal with the ups and downs if I'm gonna have practice, if I'm not. I can't deal with I can't deal with the emotional insecurity my kids are having because of all the stuff they're dealing with at school, all the ups and downs. I can't deal with the financial, struggles. I can't not watch the porn, whatever those darkest moments are. Man, if you can find it in yourself to just keep going, that feeling you get on back into that when you're like, I didn't give up. And now God's using those tough times to mold something better. Like J.D. Vance right here in 2016. He thought it was ludicrous he was writing this book. Now he's a senator. I can tell you right now. 11 months ago, I felt totally insignificant. I felt like a beggar. Like I was just begging for the world to let me keep going to practice, the basketball practice, the YMCA, so I could coach my team. I was just trying to squeak by, just trying to get to the next day. I wasn't thinking about the bigger picture. I wasn't thinking about something grander, just trying to do good and be a good person. And I sit here today, 11 months later, I'm doing a freaking podcast, talking to legislators every day, politicians, driving out tomorrow to go do a show, be a guest on a podcast out in Kansas City. God can do crazy things. And he wants to. I think. Maybe I don't really know. All I know is, listen, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my life, my wife, my kids, my situation, my struggle. But mostly, I said, I'm being honest. I'm thankful for the struggles. I can't explain it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just like that innate desire to be a warrior that men have. But like, I'm just thankful for every bad thing that's ever happened to me, because I know I'm right here, right now, today, doing this show, married to the woman I'm married to, with the children that I have, with the relationship that I have, the love I feel for my mother, my brothers, the people around me, the kids I coach. Like all those bad times have shaped me into who I am today. And who knows, if one of those things doesn't happen, one of them doesn't happen, maybe I don't have the right thing to say to the kid that I can tell is emotionally struggling in practice. Maybe if one of those things doesn't happen, I don't get in the car and go wherever and whatever the butterfly effect is that made me go to my now wife, but at the time my buddy in college's sister. Maybe I don't go to the dorm room and meet her that night. So I'm just thankful. I'm just thankful for all that. Just thankful for life's the mundane. I'm thankful for all you guys. Thankful for y'all listening to the show, watching the show, and for continuing to encourage me and engage with me and help me make this show better. I have no belief that that one day I will wake up and be like J.D. Vance and feel like I was a Nostradamus and he wrote this book and then now he's a senator. I have no expectations or belief that this thing's going to end up being crazy big. But I do have a belief that if it does get there, it'll be because it did good, and people needed the message. So listen, I love y'all. Hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope you got all the food you wanted to eat. Get to pray with the people you want to pray with. See the people you want to see. And I hope you get to be thankful for all the things I get to be thankful for. And that if you're going through bad times right now, I'll pray that next year you'll be sitting in your house saying the things I'm saying right now about, man, I'm just so glad those bad stuff was happening a year ago. So, yeah, there you go. Appreciate y'all listening tonight. I, for dang sure, gave you way too much JRMC. Probably should cut this thing out 20 minutes ago. But thanks. I appreciate y'all for sticking around.